Hey guys, I'm Izdaisho, and we're here for day 2 of Magic 2014 coming out. And last time I just kind of jumped right in and made a deck Hunter Strength without actually testing it out. And it didn't turn out that well. It didn't turn out too badly either. I made some changes since then, but we're moving on, looking forward to another deck, and this time we're going to be playing Sliver Hive. And I've played a few games with Sliver Hive, and I think I've made the deck pretty good. I haven't made it perfect. I mean, there are definitely things that I can do to make it better, maybe in the future. I guess not definitely, but there might be something that I can fix. But for now, it's looking like a pretty solid deck, and I think you guys are going to like this one. Actually, I think you guys are going to dislike this one because I think it's really powerful. But anyway, we're going to start by going through the deck and see what we left in. So obviously I'm going to have all these Geomorphic Expanses in a 3-color deck. You really need as much fixing as you can possibly get, so they're really useful. These guys, Striking Sliver. I've actually never drawn one of these in the beginning of a game, but just getting a 1-drop Sliver is really important for this deck because all of your Slivers are going to basically pump these guys up. So just having this guy out at the beginning, he'll become a 2-2, maybe even a 3-3 or a 2-2 double strike or something. He'll get bigger, and you don't have to worry about him just being a 1-1. And the fact that he gives your guys first strike is pretty good. Generally, you're going to want your double strike guy, and then this guy is completely outclassed, but it's still just a Sliver for 1 mana. You definitely want to run that guy. Path to Exile. So I chose all of the Path to Exiles over all the Shocks for a pretty good reason, in that Path just can kill anything. Sometimes you don't want to play it early on, so that could be a reason why you might want to go for Shocks instead, or maybe in addition to Paths. Because Shock will deal with the early game better than Path does, because if you pass something on their turn 2 and they get to play a 4-drop the next turn, then you could be in pretty bad shape. But other than that, Path to Exile is just a 1-mana way to kill something at instant speed, kill anything, and it's just a really good card. So next card, Predatory Sliver. I'm so happy that they gave us 4 of these. This is probably the best Sliver in the deck, just because it's 2 mana for a 2-2, because it gives itself +1/+1, and it'll pump all your guys +1/+1. It's just a ridiculously powerful card, and I'm glad they included it in the deck. Survival of the Fittest is a really important card. If you get this card out, then the game should end pretty quickly, because you can just exchange whatever Sliver you draw, whether it be like another Predatory Sliver for whatever Sliver there is in the deck. So you can go get a giant Megantic Sliver if you have enough mana to cast it. You can get a Double Strike Sliver, Bone Size Slither if you have the mana to cast that, and it just makes your draws so much smoother. So I really recommend putting this card in the deck. At least if you haven't tried it, then leave it in until you try it. And then the deck's got 3 Rampant Growths, which is a little strange, but it does make sense. So Rampant Growth really has 2 functions. Number 1, it will accelerate you, so it'll get you to higher drops, which is not that important in this deck. You kind of, I mean, if you're casting your spells on curve, then you're going to be okay. If you cast a 2-drop on 2, a 3-drop on 3, a 4-drop on 4, etc., then that works out really well for you. But another thing that Rampant Growth does is it finds the colors in your deck. So if you only have green, then it'll give you red. If you have red and green, it'll give you white, or any of the combinations of those. So that's really why I'm including it, because the ramp part isn't as useful. Alright, next card is Sliver Construct, which is 3 colorless mana, which is the reason why I have one in the deck, just because you can cast it even if you don't have the right colors of mana. And it's just a 2-2, so it's not great. It doesn't really do that much for your team, but at the very least, it does benefit from all of your other Slivers, so that's really why it's in there. The colorless mana and the fact that it gets bigger. Mirror Entity. If you're not playing this card, you need to. First of all, it's got Changeling, which means that it's all creature types, which means that it's a Sliver, so it'll benefit from all your Sliver powers. And then sometimes you just spam the board with a bunch of Slivers, but you don't have anything to make them bigger than your opponent's creatures. Well, Mirror Entity does that. I had this really sweet play yesterday where my opponent had Fiend Huntered my Mirror Entity, so it was underneath that, and I had 7 mana. So I played a Blur Sliver, attacked with 2 Blur Slivers and 2 1/1 taupe colorless Slivers, and then my opponent blocked a couple of things, and in response, I Path to Exiled his Fiend Hunter, got my Mirror Entity back, and I still had 3 mana, so I made all my creatures 3/3s, which were big enough to eat all of his creatures, and then I won the game the next turn because I untapped and had 7 mana with Mirror Entity and 5 creatures, so that was a pretty sweet turn, and I really enjoyed it. Anyway, the next card is Steelform Sliver. There's a couple more of these in the sideboard, and you might just think that this card is way, way, way better than Sliver Construct, and you might be right, but I just decided to go with one of each because I wanted the to make sure that I'll always be able to play this one on turn 3. If I have any lands, I might not be able to play this one if I don't have a plains. So I mean, the +0/+1 is largely irrelevant, and it can often get you in trouble if you make blocks thinking that your creatures are all 2/3s or 3/4s or something like that, and then they kill this thing in combat or post combat. Then you're going to be in bad shape. Anyway, Blur Sliver is next. I left all 4 of them in because I think that this card is incredible and it's really important for the Sliver deck. It just allows you to just flood the board the next turn with another creature, and if that creature has another effect, then there's no way they can predict what you're about to play. Like, even so, if you have 3 slivers on the board and 4 or 5 open mana, then your opponent has to be really wary. If you've got a Blur Sliver out, then they could just die. I have definitely killed people from 20 without attacking them the rest of the game, and then all of a sudden I just have, if I have a Blur Sliver out, then I play the +2/+0 guy, swing in for 20. It's ridiculous, the things that you can do with this deck. Now here's a card that I had taken out at the beginning and put back in, but it's Fiery Justice. Fiery Justice deals 5 damage divided as you choose among any target creatures or players. Target opponent loses or gains 5 life. So if you just do 5 damage to their face, then they're just going to gain it right back, and that's useless. But the good thing about this is you can deal the damage to whatever creatures you want. So if you're playing the Illusions deck against the Illusions deck, this card will basically win you the game if they don't have a Lord up. But the reason, and just to hose one deck is not enough to for me to play this card as a 2-of, but the fact that it also works wonders against the zombie deck and the white aggro deck just makes it a lot more worth it in my opinion. And I think it just works really well against a whole bunch of the decks. It's a sorcery, so you have to be careful that you can't play this at instant speed and get them in combat, but you'll definitely be able to get your value out of this card. And that your opponent's gaining 5 life means almost nothing to you because you're gonna be doing a ton of damage to them if everything has gone well. All right, Hive Stirrings is a sweet card. You get 2 1/1 colorless slivers, and they're just ready to be pumped up by all your other guys, so it's a sweet card. Bone-Sized Sliver, this is my favorite one. 4 mana for a 2/2 with Double Strike, gives all your dudes Double Strike. I mean, if you've hit people with Double Strike, then you understand how powerful that can be in the end. Phase Fetters is just another way to ensure if you're stuck on mana or if they're killing all your creatures that you don't die right away. I'm not sure if I should be running it, and maybe I should just be running this Shock instead, because even though it doesn't quite do as much, it is a lot less and can help you out of sort of similar situations. Anyway, Thorncaster Sliver. Slivers have whenever this creature attacks, deal 1 damage to target creature or player. So this Sliver is obviously really powerful because if you play this, sometimes you can just wipe their board, or just if they don't have a board, then you can do extra damage to their face, and it's basically like giving all your creatures +1/+0. And yeah, it's really good. And then I included all of these Battle Slivers. A lot of the time you're just swarming their board with a whole bunch of little slivers, and Battle Sliver is really good for that. And then the last one is Megantic Sliver. I didn't include anything above this because it's really hard to cast, and the only other slivers that are in the deck are these groundshaker slivers, which are gigantic, granted that they're 5/5s and they give everything trample, but sometimes you don't need trample. Sometimes you do, and occasionally I regret it, but I'm not really running the version of the deck which searches out all your slivers. I think the only way I have to search is Survival of the Fittest, so it's not really that big of a deal. But now let's go into the cards that I didn't include. So Shock, I've already been talking about a ton. Sliver Construct just isn't really good enough to have all of them in the deck. Steelform Sliver is really an average card. I mean, as I said, the +0/+1 is sometimes okay, sometimes not great. Unflinching Courage I had in for a while just because this card is really powerful, but I didn't really see any reason to have auras in this deck. Your creatures pump each other up more than enough anyway. So I don't know. Shared animosity works well when you have a whole bunch of stirring hive stirrings. I knew I had it somewhere in my mind. When you have a bunch of hive stirrings out, then shared animosity is really good. But other than that, it's just not really worth it most of the time. I didn't include any of these cultivates. Could be a mistake because I sometimes have mana issues, but not enough that I think it's a big deal. You've seen my view on indestructibility from the sealed deck, but I'm really just not a fan of this card. I don't think it's good, pretty much at all, especially in a set where there's some Path to Exiles going around and some passivisms and face fetters and stuff, so I don't know, it's not worth it. Speaking of face fetters, I only included 2 of them, maybe 3 was right, but Armageddon is a really interesting card because basically what this card says is if you're winning on board, you're probably going to win this game because you just destroy all their lands, destroy all their resources, they can't do anything for the next couple of turns, and you have some powerful creatures out because your deck doesn't really need that many creatures to run. So maybe this would be a really good card in the deck, but for now we're going to leave it in the board. So this one, same name. Alright, so you basically just get to find another of the same sliver, but I'd rather just play a different sliver, I guess. I don't know. It's 4 mana and you're probably going to be getting a 2/2 or a 3/3, so this card is really interesting. It basically just says that creatures, when they go to the graveyard, for both players, this is very important, it's not just for you, it's also for your opponent, when your creature goes to the graveyard it comes back, but I think I'd just rather play a sliver than that. Yeah, and then this thing is pretty good. Creatures you control will gain double strike. Sometimes they have double strike anyway because you have a sliver. It is instant double strike, so this card is so much better than Cleaver Riot. And then it says untap all creatures you control after this phase, and you can do Entwine. Just basically says you can do both if you pay the Entwine cost. So if you pay 7, then you get to attack twice with double strike. If not, then you get to just choose one of those, and it's okay. And then Wild Pair, I just don't need this card in the deck. It's so much overkill. You're going to be winning anyway if you're playing 6 drops, and then I don't need a Titanic Ultimatum. I mean, 7 drop, yeah, it's fine, but there's just no point in playing it. This deck is powerful enough without it. So, without further ado, let's get into the gameplay. Hope you guys enjoyed this this little deck guide. I don't know, maybe I'll do another one of these in the future if I have any changes, but for now, I'm just gonna label this as the Sliver Hive deck guide. I've played a good amount of games, probably about 10 or so matches with it, and I've had pretty high success rate. But yeah, so that'll be it. See you guys in the game. Bye.